Hello, welcome back to For the Girls. We are very excited to give you everything you need to know into how F1 logistics work and how the teams actually manage to get the entire paddock to almost every continent. Message us for ideas or topics you want to learn more about. We are at F1R The Girls on Instagram. I'm Sarah.
I'm Tiggy.
And I'm Chessa.
Now for our little special segment, we are going to talk through logistics, which we admit they're not the sexiest, but they're really interesting. And for an F1 season, think about what it takes to move the equipment of 10 teams across 5 continents in 9 months by truck, plane, boats. There's a lot of good stuff in here. So Chessa, do you want to get us started?
Yes, logistics is my passion.
Yes.
As the resident logistical coordinator.
Chessa for so long would be talking about just kind of randomly saying, oh, wow, how do they get this stuff across the Atlantic Ocean? And Chessa will be like, we need to know.
So for each race, the teams need to bring enough parts to essentially fully replace their cars if they break. They bring 2,500 liters of fuel, 200 liters of motor oil, and 90 liters of coolant, not to mention the tools and over 20,000 pounds of electronic equipment. So apparently, like when you're adding this all together, the biggest teams bring as much as 50 tons of gear. That's like 7 or 8 elephants every weekend. And in a video they made about this, Williams said that they need 400 miles of wiring and cables to run their IT.
Yeah, and when you see on the screen the pit wall and that whole office they have in there running the strategy, that's all built at every single race. So it's
exactly
a massive undertaking. So the traveling teams are about 50 to 75 people, and they include, of course, the drivers, the principal, the engineers, data analysts and mechanics, the pit crew, the media team, PR people, and then, of course, security and trainers, managers, and agents. So the teams also have to bring a ton of food and equipment for the motorhomes and the hospitality spaces because they have to host and feed all of these people. And then on top of that, there's also 30 containers of hospitality equipment for each weekend and over 300,000 pounds of broadcast media equipment. And so when we talk about hospitality and how much hospitality there was in Miami, that's also all usually temporary. And so that's just adding on to the massive amount they need to haul around.
That is insane. And it's probably a good time to mention quickly what we were saying before, just about the increased scrutiny on the environmental impact of shipping all of this stuff all over the world. I guess a good example of this is the recent downsizing of the iconic 3-floor McLaren Brand Center, which had kitchens, driver rooms, meeting rooms, office space, like everything. But after evaluating their travel costs and the carbon impact of all of it, McLaren said, let's scale back the famous motorhome and refurbish it to be much smaller. Now, I think it only needs 8 trucks to transport it instead of 17, which is insane. But these motorhomes just are crazy overall. They require over 15 people and like 30 hours of continuous labor to assemble.
It's funny that they call them motorhomes because they're really just temporary buildings or like actual homes.
Yeah, you would never know seeing them on screen that they're temporary. Like they look real.
So how does this actually all work? Since all of the teams are headquartered in Europe, the European races are a little bit more simple logistics-wise. Everything for the races in Europe is moved by road. So the cars, the spare parts, and the essential tools are loaded into branded team trucks that kind of like travel to the race. And then other non-essential things like fuel and other equipment will be delivered by local partners on the ground and other technical contractors. So for this, the cars aren't really taken apart too much here. They're just packed nicely into special truck containers and not really broken down.
And one thing to note is technically Haas is American owned. And so technically they're based in North Carolina, but I think everyone considers that to be just a little bit more of a technical thing because they are actually based out of Europe.
Good point, Sarah. So for the international races, the equipment is split up into critical and non-critical parts. The non-critical things are like jacks, tools, and other catering and hospitality setups. What's cool is the teams kind of like have 5 different sets of these, and those are always moving by boat between the races. So that helps to kind of offset some of the crunch time things that happen with the critical items. So this is referred to as the kit. This includes the chassis, the tire, engines, wings, computers, all of that. The cars for this actually get fully stripped down to their lowest parts and then packed up and moved by plane. So what's cool is the teams have their own custom cargo crates, and most use cargo planes chartered by Formula One management, and then DHL helps organize a lot of that. They're the official logistics partners of F1. Depending on where the teams are located, the flights leave Europe either from Munich or London.
And so a fun fact is DHL actually is a special 35-person team who travel to every race to manage transportation, setup, breakdown, and packing. And then in addition to DHL, since they're all independent entities, the teams don't just have to rely on F1 corporates. They can also contract with their own logistics providers as well. So, for example, Ferrari now uses Seva Logistics after using UPS for the past 9 years. I will say, if I ran a team, I feel like I would want to choose a provider that was not DHL.
I actually had the best experience with DHL today. So it's so funny that you say that. It was like so organized.
I have had to go to the DHL New York City headquarters in your neighborhood, Chessa, to like pick up a package. I trekked there deep into Hell's Kitchen, and it was not a pleasant experience.
All their good people are on the F1 team.
So how about the timing of all of this? The items needed to get the garage set up arrive at the circuit first on the Tuesday after the last race. Then the rest of the cargo comes, including the cars, gets in on Wednesday. Typically by Wednesday afternoon, everything is in the pit lane and the paddock is fully operational and ready for media day on Thursday. Sometimes custom checks are done at the circuit to speed things up, but for the most part, teams can't access their crates until every team's cargo has arrived. And then when the race is over, they pack it all up. And for back-to-back weekends, there's only 3 days between to get stuff actually moved across the world, which is crazy.
Insane. I can't even like do my laundry in 3 days.
If it's not a back-to-back race weekend, cars are flown back to their factories to be repainted and get all tuned up.
Or if you're the Red Bull, you go back for a little boot camp and lose some weight.
Yeah, or if you're the Williams, you get paint stripped off you to lose weight. It is so interesting thinking about when we talk about kind of reliability issues and hydraulics issues and pipes not being set up correctly, I wonder how much of that is attributable to human error from having to rebuild the cars. Not that the teams would ever say that, but if it's ever like, oh, actually just a mechanic forgot to plug something into the right place when entirely rebuilding this car.
It's actually interesting you say that, because when I was doing a lot of research for this, people talk a lot about how the mechanics bear the brunt of this, and they're very, very tired from all of this like constant setup and redoing, and they have honestly like some of the hardest jobs. So
I'm sure. I mean, we see that during the races when someone crashes in practice or quali and they have to stay up all night repairing everything. They are unsung heroes of Formula One for sure.
100%. So what about the tires? So Pirelli, as we know, is the official tire provider of F1, and they have their own whole logistics operation as well. They have a massive fitting center, and they also have their own Paddock Club suite and catering tent, so you can be a tire VIP at the track. Pirelli has to bring 1,600 tires to a race, since each car gets 13 available sets of slick tires plus the 3 sets of rain tires. And like the teams, Pirelli has a fleet of truck to get the tires around for races in Europe. For races outside of Europe, they use cargo ships to bring around 6 shipping containers full of tires to the track. So in the days leading up to the race, the teams will bring all of their wheels to a tire fitting tent, and then Pirelli technicians there mount, balance, and fill each tire by hand.
Wow.
It's insane. And actually, fun fact here, not all of the teams have like the budget and resources to have 40 sets of wheels. So then between the weekend, if one tire gets degraded, they'll like go to the Pirelli tent, they'll take off the tire and put a new one on. And then actually after the race ends, the teams will come back with their mounted tires. Pirelli will dismount, crush, take off the tires and then ship them back to their factory to be analyzed and then recycled. Love to see the recycling. And then the rims or the wheels are returned back to the teams.
Nice. So what about all of the logistics and supply chain issues this year that we are hearing everywhere? Formula One is not immune. We have seen logistics complications all over the world due to COVID, the war going on in Europe. Christian was saying it has the potential to wreak havoc on the season, but honestly, things have seemed smooth, at least from our point of view. I'm sure it's crazy for them on, behind the scenes. With inflation, though, the cost of freight is skyrocketing, and it's another reason the teams are pushing back on these cost caps. But it's the biggest season yet. There's a ton of back-to-back races, so it's been extremely tight on the logistics side and will continue to be. I think some of the teams have already had some issues. Haas had to miss the start of Bahrain preseason testing when freight was delayed due to a plane problem. And DHL also had to do a rescue mission to recover equipment from 3 teams ahead of the Australian Grand Prix after the ship it was on was delayed.
See, DHL doing God's work. They can do the rescue missions.
It also seems almost inevitable that at some point, if they keep stacking back-to-back races, like there's going to be some disaster where a team can't get some of their core parts on time.
We end up having a super long season with all back-to-back races. Maybe they'll float the idea in one world of like having 2 cars or like 2 of the essential kits. Who knows?
True. Good point.
Well, I hope you guys all enjoyed this logistics deep dive as much as we did. We're trying to help you guys nerd out with us all the time. So I hope you enjoyed it.